Hello, thank you for checking this out. My name is John. I was trained as a pastor. I went to seminary and everything else, but this is one of the ways I'm trying to do something good with that. Education. This is going to be called An Invitation to the Christian Spiritual Life. And what I'm going to do is treat you as if you're literally seated just on the other side of the corner of this desk. And we're just going to have a conversation, if you don't mind. Not necessarily a formal lecture, but just try to make it quality, right? So, what I would love to do is invite you to get a piece of paper. And if you don't have a piece of paper, you can pull open your phone and open up the Notes app and take some notes. This is a big topic. It's going to be a difficult one to summarize. And in fact, it's because this topic, you could talk about your entire life. What I have done right here is come up with a whole bunch of notes. I'm going to divide this up across 2 videos, at least this time. But what I will do is literally just talk through some of this as if you and I are just having a conversation. So I hope you don't mind the informality of this, but I feel as though this topic doesn't need to be formal. It just needs to be deep, you know? And with that, let me say thank you for coming and checking this out, and let's get started, okay? Let's see if we can do this. I have the opportunity of introducing you to 2 really fantastic books. The first one is called Celebration of Discipline, which is a fantastic book by Richard Foster. It's known as a classic. It's very much about the spiritual disciplines that you might want to cultivate in your life. But the other one is this, The Heart of the World by Thomas Keating, an introduction to contemplative Christianity. I would say if you have the ability to order those online, go right ahead because they're fantastic. But let's be honest. Right now, we are in an unprecedented time, and most of us are at home with a stay-at-home ordinance that says we can only go out for groceries or going to the doctor or maybe a life essential work. All right. Well, in the Celebration of Discipline in chapter 1, he says that there's 3 things that are the largest obstacles to having a Christian spirituality: hurry, noise, and crowds. And here, with the onset of this global pandemic, we have all 3 of those taken away. Hurry, gone. Noise, you might have some noise, but probably less of it. And crowds, we're not supposed to be gathering in much larger groups than 10 or so. It is very difficult to cultivate a Christian spirituality if your life is dominated by 1 or all 3 of those things. How fascinating. And I say this with no judgment, but on the main line and where we are just west of Philly, our lives are very much dominated by hurry, noise, and crowds. Oop. Life goes on. Let's keep going. What I found, though, is I don't really have that much that's fantastic to say, but I'm going to quote a lot of other people that have said fantastic things. So, like I said, Richard Foster says that hurry, noise, and crowds are the greatest obstacles to having a Christian faith. And you might disagree, but let's be honest, modern culture loves to let us keep our lives at the surface level and to never go any deeper than that. And as long as your life is dominated by hurry, noise, and crowds, you're going to almost by necessity have to stay up here. And what I really love was a quote I used at a sermon a few weeks ago by Carl Jung. He says, "Some people will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid their own soul." That is deep. So, how the Christian tradition has helped people make their own soul blossom, deepen, and heal is not often talked about at churches. In Western tradition, in the Western postmodern, post-Enlightenment Christianity, the emphasis that we often have at our churches is what to believe, not necessarily how to believe. So let me break that down for just a moment. You might know of the Apostles' Creeds, right? You might know of even the Chalcedonian Creed or the Athanasian. That one's not really used too much in Presbyterian circles, but there's a number of them, and they all tell us what to believe. But how many of you have really engaged with the topic of how to go about those beliefs? You say that God is the creator of heaven and earth. Wonderful, that's what to believe. How do you go about your life in a way that affirms that what belief? Do you take care of the earth as though it's of equal reverence to heaven? That might be one way. But let me say this. All of us are aching to have more of a depth of soul. And just learning all of the what's about Christianity, what to believe, what era did this change happen, who did what when, that doesn't necessarily help us cultivate a Christian spirituality. You can know a lot about church history and much about the Bible and so much, I guess, about all the authors of the faith for so long, but that doesn't necessarily mean you've got a beautiful soul. And the spiritual disciplines and Christian spirituality are all about that. And let's talk it through real briefly. Perhaps a word illustration will help. So the word SPECT means to look at things, like a spectacle. Well, a lot of our culture encourages us to live lives that are spectacles, that are worth looking at, but perhaps just once. And then maybe some of us do some things with our lives that seem despicable. You look at it and you feel like you gotta look away because what they're doing over there is terrible. But every so often you meet someone who has a life that's respectable, that it's worth looking at them again because what they're doing is respectable. What about your heart and soul? Is your heart and soul worth looking at just once because it flames brightly and hotly, but that's it? Or is your heart and soul despicable? You take one quick glance at it and then even you yourself have to turn away because you're horrified by what you see there. Or, in some sense, is your heart and soul respectable? It's worth looking at because it's beautiful, because you've cultivated it, because you've taken in the Christian tradition and helped or allowed the Christian tradition's wisdom to help your soul blossom. Now, everything that we're saying so far may not resonate with you. And I realize that. It's because this topic is rather difficult. It's kind of hard to imagine, but these are the deepest things in life. And how fascinating that God has taken away hurry, noise, and crowds, maybe so that some of us can cultivate a beautiful and deep soul in the midst of all of this. You see, one of the most wonderful Hebrew names for God is the one who wastes nothing. This time doesn't have to go to waste. Let it be used for good. Let's see if we can cultivate something good and within ourselves during this time. So, the incarnation is the Christmas story, but it's when we understand that God became flesh and dwelled among us. Jesus is this unique thing of human and divine together, intimately close. And we have a phrase for this, that the two natures of Jesus existed without confusion, division, separation, or change. Okay. Well, Christian spirituality is similar to that. in the sense that we've got two major views of the world. One that says the world is strictly material. That's all that there is. There's just matter, nothing else. And then there are others that like to say that no, everything is spirit and everything is like a projection of a dream of a god or something else. That this world is all transient and whatever you want to say. Spirit. Well, Christian spirituality does the same thing as the incarnation, and it takes these two narratives and somewhat puts them together and says we exist in this life with spirit and matter close, intimately entwined. That spirit and matter exist without confusion, division, separation, or change. So for those of you that are leaning towards just being materialists, you have spirit and you need to pay attention to it. And to those of you that lean towards the spiritual and you try to avoid the world, you have a world and you have a body to live in. And so Christian spirituality is very much about learning how to cultivate a soul, a beautiful and deep soul, while also recognizing that we are this beautiful combination of spirit and matter at the same time. And it's a mystery that's just like the incarnation that maybe only God can fully describe. So, let's finish this. Ready? If your life feels shallow, reactive, wounded, if your life feels like it's causing yourself and others the same hurts over and over and over, and if you want to experience the abundant life that Jesus talks about in the New Testament, then join us for the next couple videos. Because we're going to go on a journey about how to cultivate a Christian spirituality that not just affirms what a Christian believes, but also goes about asking how do we live as Christians in this world. And guess what? For me personally, Christian spirituality, spirit, respiration, aspire, you hear the word in there, S-P-I-R. Christian spirituality is all about allowing God to do CPR on your soul and helping you come alive again. Many people have diminished and shrunken Christianity down to just being following rules, keeping a moral code, or making sure that you maintain and perpetuate church culture. But that's not what Christianity is. Christianity is about the full thriving of the full person, because as Irenaeus says, that is the most glorious thing to God. Now, I'm not perfect at any of this. I recognize that, and in fact, I'm going to anchor myself within the quote from Thomas Merton. The book is right there. That along this journey, we will only ever feel like beginners. So let's be beginners together. This has been an invitation to the Christian spiritual life. Let's do this journey together. Thank you.